Okay, so get ready for this, everyone. Today we're going deep on what happens when, well, humans decide to say sayonara to the whole hunter-gatherer lifestyle and settle down, start farming.
Yeah,
You figure it'd be all like sunshine and roses, right? Bigger harvest, good times.
right.
But this academic paper, it's called The Transition to Agriculture, and let me tell you, kind of flips the script.
Hmm.
Turns out going from, hunting and gathering to farming had some seriously wild consequences,
Yeah, definitely.
especially for our health. So,
It really does challenge the simple story we tell ourselves.
yeah,
That agriculture equals progress, right?
right.
This paper calls it a double-edged sword. You get the blessings and you get the curses all kind of tangled up.
Ooh, I like that. A double-edged sword. So, okay, lay it on me. What kind of curses are we talking about here? What's the dirt?
Well, for starters, let's play a little game. Imagine a world without dentists. Does
Ooh,
that sound so great now?
not really, no.
The paper points out that all those yummy carbs that we love, those grains, the starchy foods, they were like a feast for the bacteria living in our mouths.
So basically the invention of bread led to the need for, someone to invent the dentist.
Pretty much.
Ouch.
Yeah, because those carbs break down into sugars, and that feeds the bacteria. They just love to hang out in the cracks of our molars.
Uh-huh.
And back then, forget about it.
Yikes. Speaking of surprises, this paper also dives into skeletal changes, too. I always thought farming meant, like, people got taller, stronger because, well, they had a constant food supply.
That makes sense, right? It's a common thought.
Yeah.
Turns out, though, based on what they found, agricultural populations actually were shorter. They showed stunted growth
Really?
compared to their hunter-gatherer, like, ancestors.
Wait, so more food led to worse nutrition in some cases?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
does that even happen?
Well, even though agriculture provided more food overall, like a greater quantity, it lacked the nutrient variety that you find in a hunter-gatherer diet.
Yeah.
That had wild plants, a ton of animal protein.
Right.
And the paper uses this really stark example of children in prehistoric North America, and the ones that were, eating mostly agricultural products, they had shorter femurs.
Huh.
And that indicates, they just weren't getting all the nutrients they needed to grow.
So shorter femurs, meaning they weren't as tall.
Right.
That's like a skeletal record saying, hey, we switched to farming and things got a little rough for a bit.
Exactly. And it wasn't just height either. The research shows signs of like vitamin deficiencies.
Yeah.
And those deficiencies, well, they left their mark on ancient bones.
Fascinating. So we got dental problems, we got stunted growth.
Yeah.
What other surprises are waiting for our early farmer friends?
Well, you know how we always hear that agriculture led to these big population booms and people started settling down permanently?
Yeah.
That part's true for sure, but there's a catch.
Let me guess. All those people living closer together, plus, they're hanging out with their farm animals all the time,
Yeah.
led to a, what, surge in infectious diseases?
Bingo.
Okay, yeah.
The paper cites studies that show a significant increase in infection rates in early farming communities. 12 out of 18 studies, to be exact.
So it's like they were trading, like a six-pack for a steady supply of carbs and a whole bunch of new diseases.
Yeah, there's some truth to that.
Sounds a little bit like modern life, actually.
There are definitely some parallels there. And we're not talking about, just like the sniffles here. Some of these diseases, they were pretty serious, even life-threatening.
The paper mentioned some, honestly, kind of scary-sounding names, like
Yeah.
periostitis, tuberculosis, and trypanematosis. Can you break those down for us in plain English? What exactly are we talking about here?
Sure. Well, periostitis, that's a painful bone inflammation, and it's often caused by an infection.
Okay.
Tuberculosis, as you probably know, it's a serious lung infection, and it's actually still a global health issue today. Yeah.
And then there's trypanematosis, and that's a whole category of bacterial infections,
Mhm.
the most well-known one being syphilis.
Hold up. Syphilis. What does that have to do with farming?
Well, it all comes back to those settled communities. The paper points out that along with agriculture came, new social structures, and unfortunately that also meant increased opportunities for sexually transmitted infections to spread, like syphilis.
Wow. Okay. So early agricultural life. It was definitely more complicated than, like, we often give it credit for, It's like more food, but also more dental problems, stunted growth, and a whole bunch of new diseases, including, STDs.
It really does paint a more nuanced picture of what that transition was actually like, yeah.
Definitely nuanced. The paper does mention that agriculture had its benefits too, right?
Of course. It was revolutionary, there's no doubt about that. It just wasn't all sunshine and roses like we sometimes imagine.
Yeah. Okay, so we've established that becoming farmers, it had its downsides.
But knowing all of this, what can we actually do to create a better food system, for today?
Well, one important step is diversity.
Okay.
Diversity is key.
Like what? Like dating outside your species? What are we talking?
No, no.
Right.
Remember how we were just talking about all those nutrient deficiencies?
Yeah.
The hunter-gatherers, they ate a wider range of foods, right?
Hmm.
While early farmers, they were really focused on just a few staple crops, and
Oh.
that's a big lesson we can learn from.
Or ditching those massive monoculture farms,
Yeah,
going for more variety. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
exactly. More diversity in what we grow
Okay.
means better nutrition, and it also means healthier ecosystems.
Okay.
It's win-win.
So variety is the spice of life,
Yes.
and apparently the key to a healthier planet, too.
Yeah.
I like it. What else can we do? I'm ready to take notes.
Well, let's talk about soil for a minute.
Okay.
Remember how we discussed those waste disposal issues in those early settlements?
No, yeah.
Healthy soil is still a major concern today.
Right, because if the soil's depleted, then the crops grown in it won't be as nutritious.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a chain reaction.
Sustainable farming practices that nourish the soil are so important.
Okay.
So things like composting, crop rotation, and really cutting back on those chemical fertilizers.
So it's all about working with nature, not against it.
Exactly.
I like that. But let's be real. Humans aren't always the best at not wasting things.
True. That's true. Food waste is a huge problem globally.
It's wild how much food is wasted when you think about all the people that are, struggling with hunger.
Absolutely. Reducing food waste at every stage, from farm to table, that's so important for a sustainable and just food system.
Less monoculture.
Yeah.
Healthier soil, less waste. Got it.
Right.
But what about, us everyday folks?
Yeah.
What can we do?
Our choices as consumers, they have a lot of power.
Okay.
So supporting local farmers, choosing sustainable options, nutritious options, those actions send a big message about what kind of food system we actually want.
So every time I go to the farmer's market and grab that locally grown organic produce,
Sure.
I'm actually voting with my wallet.
You got it. And all those little choices, they add up, right? Imagine millions of people making those choices. It can really start to shift things.
That's empowering. It makes me feel like we can actually make a difference.
We absolutely can, just by being more mindful about where our food comes from,
Yeah.
the choices that we make. We
Yeah.
can really contribute to a healthier future for everyone.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked solutions, but I kind of want to circle back to those specific diseases that the paper mentions.
Yeah.
We talked about pericytis and tuberculosis, but what about treponematosis?
Yeah.
You said the most well-known type is syphilis.
That's right. Syphilis is a bacterial infection, and unfortunately, it was pretty common in early agricultural societies.
I guess that makes sense, given what we talked about with bigger populations and those changes in social structures.
Exactly. It highlights how seemingly unrelated factors, can have a huge impact on health. It's all connected.
So syphilis was a big deal back then. What about now? Is it still a problem?
Well, thankfully, we have treatments for syphilis now,
Okay.
so it's not the same kind of threat that it used to be.
Okay.
But it is still a good reminder that infectious diseases can have such a big impact on human history, and our choices and our behaviors play a role in how they spread.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to just think of diseases as medical problems,
Yeah.
but they're also intertwined with social factors,
You're right.
history, and even things like agriculture.
Absolutely. And speaking of that connection between agriculture and health,
Yeah.
the paper actually goes into another interesting area, the rise of zoonotic diseases.
Zoonotic diseases. So those are the ones that can jump from animals to humans, right? Like rabies.
Rabies is a good example, but there are many others.
Okay.
Think about the flu. It originally came from birds.
Oh, wow. I never really thought about it like that.
Yeah.
So how did agriculture, lead to the spread of these zoonotic diseases?
Well, remember we talked about people living in close proximity to their animals in these agricultural societies.
Yeah.
That increased contact. It created more chances for pathogens to jump from animals to humans.
Ah, so it's like having all those farm animals around and their waste too.
Yeah,
It's just created a perfect storm for disease to transmit.
exactly. And the paper even suggests that some of the farming practices themselves might have made it worse.
Really?
Yeah, for example, irrigating fields.
Okay.
That could have created breeding grounds for mosquitoes.
Ooh.
And that leads to more mosquito-borne illnesses.
Wow, that's fascinating. So even something as simple as how we water our crops
Right.
can have these huge like unintended consequences on our health.
It shows how interconnected everything is.
Yeah.
It's not just about the food that we grow, but also how we grow it and what those choices mean for the environment and our health.
Okay, so agriculture, in a way, it like opened the door for more zoonotic diseases. Are we still dealing with that today?
Absolutely. In fact, many experts believe that the next big pandemic, it could very well come from a zoonotic disease.
Oh.
Think about the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right, right. And all the talk about how it might have started in a wet market.
Exactly. As human populations grow and we keep encroaching on animal habitats, the risk of these zoonotic diseases spilling over into human populations, it just keeps increasing.
That's a scary thought, and it makes you realize this isn't just ancient history, right?
No.
These issues are still so relevant today.
Very relevant. And it comes back to why it's so important to understand the past, because it can really inform our choices for the future.
So, taking a look back at those early agricultural societies,
Yeah.
with all their, dental problems, the bone deficiencies, and all those new diseases,
Yeah.
what are the biggest takeaways for us today?
Well, one big takeaway is that progress, it isn't always just a straight line upward. It's more like a winding path, lots of twists and turns you don't expect.
Yeah, it's kind of like how, agriculture gave us this food security,
Right.
but it also kind of brought, this whole new set of health problems along with it.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even like the most groundbreaking advancements, they can have these unintended consequences.
Right.
And we need to be aware of that as we try to shape our food systems for the future.
So it's not just about producing more food, it's about
Yeah.
producing it in a way that's sustainable
Yeah.
and actually good for human health.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
It's about finding that sweet spot where we can really nourish both people and the planet at the same time.
I like that. We talked about some steps we can take in that direction.
Yeah.
More diversity in what we grow, healthier soil practices, less waste in general.
Yeah.
But are there any specific things we can learn from, like those early farmers and their struggles with, those zoonotic diseases?
Definitely. Their experience really highlights how important it is that we manage our interactions with animals carefully.
Okay.
As we continue to raise livestock for food, we have to be really careful about biosecurity measures to prevent diseases from spreading.
So things like vaccination programs for animals,
Right.
good hygiene practices on farms,
Yeah.
maybe even like rethinking how we design,
Yeah,
and manage livestock facilities.
exactly. It's all about minimizing the chances for those pathogens to make the jump from animals to humans.
And I imagine this is even more important now than ever,
Right.
considering how, interconnected our world is. Like a disease outbreak in one part of the world
Right.
can spread across continents like that.
Absolutely. Globalization and how much we travel now, it's
Right.
made us more vulnerable to the rapid spread of infectious diseases.
Okay.
So these biosecurity measures, they're more crucial than ever.
It's like that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly.
It makes you think, we really can't afford to be complacent
No.
when it comes to zoonotic diseases.
Right.
So wrapping up this deep dive
Yeah.
into the, double-edged sword of agriculture,
Uh-huh.
what's the one message you really hope people listening take away from all of this?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that our food choices matter.
Okay.
They have these like ripple effects and they extend far beyond our plates. They impact the environment, animal welfare, even global health.
So it's about connecting the dots
Yeah.
between what we eat, how it's produced,
Right.
and, all those consequences for ourselves and for the planet.
Exactly. It's about making informed choices that line up with our values.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Choices that contribute to a more sustainable and equitable food future for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been so interesting, exploring all these complexities of agriculture. Yeah, and the effects it's had on human health.
Definitely.
So thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I hope this encourages people to really think about their food choices,
Yeah.
to advocate for a food system that's better for everybody.
I like that. And to all of you listening out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the future of food is in our hands, So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.